Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. Well, did I call it or what? What was it, 4, maybe 5 days ago? The Brandon regime literally said that the economy is stronger than it has been historically.
When you look at inflation, when we look at where we are economically, and we are stronger economically than we have been in history.
And man, almost instantly has that not aged well. And this is exactly what we were predicting. We knew that on July 13th, the Bureau of Labor Statistics was set to announce June CPI inflation numbers. And while Brandon and his stooges are celebrating a June jobs surge, which is relatively typical at the start of the summer season, the reality is, under the hood, things are not looking so well. Possibly the worst thing for an economy is runaway inflation. And once again, folks, the exact same headline of highest inflation seen in nearly 40 years comes back to haunt the Biden administration, and frankly comes back to haunt every single regular American citizen, and frankly global citizen. Joe Biden is celebrating his historic economy and economic success as the middle class is being squeezed, and really, it's just getting started. Let me show you guys what's going on here. Let's cover the reality that Joe Biden continues to ignore. We got some stuff to get into, so let's roll the tape. All right, folks, so here's the initial report.
Wow, 9.1% year over year, much hotter than expected, everybody. 1981, November 1981 is the last time that we have seen an inflationary number this high for CPI. Again, 9.1%. There you go, folks. That is the big story here. Now, let's go to that month over month. If you strip out food and energy, let me give you the annual year over year. That's higher than expected, too, the core. Not that we care about that because it's all gas and food, but even the core number coming in hotter than expected at 5.9%. We were only looking for 5.7% on the core. Again, strong numbers. Gasoline, a jump of 11.2%. New vehicles, a jump of 0.7%. Energy, 7.5% jump. Again, these are very, very hot numbers.
9.1 CPI and nearly 6% core inflation. A month-over-month jump of 1.3%. Annualized, that's 15.6% inflation at this current rate if it was to keep up. Do you know how much of a clown that makes Joe Biden and Karine Jean-Pierre look? The economy is stronger historically than it's ever been, with a 15.6 annualized rate of inflation for the month of June, with CPI jumping 0.4% from 8.7 all the way up to 9.1% and far greater than what the consensus prediction was between Bloomberg and other financial groups. Everything's going absolutely stellar as the market remains red. Everything is down. And what do you think's going to happen now? Well, I don't know what the exact date's going to be, but there's going to be a Fed meeting in July, and Jerome Powell is now faced with two options: a 75 basis point hike or a 100 basis point hike, which means either 0.75% or 1% hike to the federal funds rate. That means one thing and one thing alone: economic trouble is right around the corner. If you look at historical data, federal funds rate, 62-year historical chart, every single time the Fed rate increases or sharply increases, a recession ensues. Every single time. Without fault, without question. The gray lines are recessions, and whenever there's a parabolic increase over a short period of time to the rate, whenever borrowing money becomes more expensive, the economy takes a nosedive. And the worst part about this is that it's going to be worse than it should have been. This is what I keep saying. You know, people keep telling me that I'm somehow a bad person, or that I just don't care about poor people when I say this, but we should have already either taken on the recession post-2022, or we should have induced a recession shortly after. This is what happens when monetary and economic policy becomes political. You can't subsidize your way out of a recession, and you can't just hope to the Lord that shutting down the global economy for a year and a half, 2 years, depending on where you were or where you're living, that's just not going to have a devastating impact on the economy when it's finally time to pay the piper. And that's exactly what's going on here. It's all political. Joe Biden refuses to take his leadership position seriously, and Jerome Powell at this point might even be worse. It seems like he cares more about his reputation than he does tackling inflation. We've only seen one 75 basis point hike. The current federal funds rate is still sitting historically low. The Fed needs to finally take real swift action. At this point, they're a year behind. There's this article right over here from the 30th of November 2021. Powell says that the Fed could speed up bond tapering to counter inflation. They've yet to make a significant effort. Inflation has been rampant. It refuses to slow down. It's still going up. It Yet Jerome Powell is still too scared to increase the interest rate. It needs to happen. It's gonna hurt. It's gonna hurt the economy. It's gonna hurt your 401k in the short term. But you know what's a whole lot worse? A 15.6% annualized inflation rate. That seriously makes you poor, and that absolutely decimates the buying power of the middle and lower class. And everything when it comes to economics, especially in the macro term, is slow moving. There hasn't even been close to enough time to see the true devastating consequences of hyperinflation. If you guys are paying attention to the numbers, inflation is slowly starting to shift. Initially, the biggest drivers of inflation were transportation costs and energy costs, but it's now shifting towards everyday goods, and that's what's going to happen. It starts off with gas prices and everything else going on in supply chain issues, and it's slowly going to start making its way to the consumer at a worse and worse rate. You're going to pay more for groceries each and every single month going forward. We have not reached peak yet. That's why when Joe Biden says something like, "Today's report is a reminder that inflation is too high. Fighting inflation is my top economic priority, and while the numbers today are not acceptable, they are also outdated. In the past 30 days, the average price of gas has dropped by 40 cents a gallon." The guy is literally still trying to rewrite history and pat himself on the back. Gas prices are down. Why? Because inflation is starting to take its toll and people are buying less gas. Because rates are increasing, and that's causing a pullback in spending and investment, and so demand for gasoline is going down. I mean, that's the whole strategy of the Fed. It's called demand destruction. That's the only way to tackle inflation, or runaway inflation. The idea that the June numbers are outdated and that July is going to be significantly better, maybe to a certain extent that might be kind of true, we don't know yet, but what's very likely to be the reality is that inflation is going to remain high, savings are going to continue to tank, earnings or real wages in respect to inflation continue to crater. As you guys see right over here in this chart, real average hourly earnings hit an all-time low. Joe Biden's celebrating the price for a barrel of oil reducing. Meanwhile, inflation is running rampant, and probably by the end of the summer, what we're going to start seeing is an earnings recession. Company financial statements are likely to look abysmal, markets are likely to tank, GDP is likely to shrink, and the more we kick the can down the road and avoid the hard leadership decisions that need to be made at the top, which we have been avoiding, by the way, since 2020, we've tried to subsidize our way out of the pain, we've done nothing but create bubbles everywhere, and when it's finally time to pay our debts, it's going to be a whole lot worse than it could have been had we just taken it on the chin to begin with. And look, I could be wrong. Maybe government officials are just so much smarter than I am, and endlessly printing money and going into debt is actually great fiscal policy. And maybe we'll be on an endless bull run forever, and everyone's just going to keep getting richer and richer and richer after this little inflation blip, like they want you to believe. Maybe government and the Fed has figured out a way to end the idea of recessions in general. Or, which is probably much more likely, they're absolute incompetent cowards who avoid the hard truths and the hard decisions that need to be made, and they're making these problems a whole lot worse than they should have been in the first place. Who knows, maybe I'm just a dummy, and they're geniuses. Maybe more government spending is always the answer. As the Biden administration continues to tell us, we're seeing an incompetent administration trying to tackle inflation with record government spending, and a Fed chair in Jerome Powell, who moves like a damn turtle on this stuff, seems to just be gambling and relying on hope that things are going to get better. And probably the worst part of all, as things continue to get worse, they continue to tell us how good things are. Oh, well, the labor market is looking great as the middle class is getting crushed. Crazy, crazy, crazy stuff. But like usual, folks, only time will tell, and we'll just have to see what's going on here. But as it stands right now, it's not looking too hot. Expect a significant increase to the Fed fund rate over the next couple of months, and a significant economic downturn. Truly historic. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.